This is the Triple Play Fantasy Basketball Show, Coach's Corner. I am your host, Coach James Lewis, with my co-host, Coach Kevin Coleman, doing some college basketball, Michigan basketball preview. We're talking about the top teams in the nation, and we would be remiss if we did not mention the Michigan Wolverines. And since Juwan Howard has gotten there, they are a team to be reckoned with. They are a team that could cut down the nets. And based on what they did last year, I'm going to let Coach Coleman kind of talk you through what happened last year, and then we'll talk about, maybe some of the matchups that we'll see this year. They're playing one of the strongest conferences. We'll talk about departures. We'll talk about their recruiting class, which is highly touted. Talk about some NBA prospects, and then at the end, we'll give some of our predictions on the season.
Yeah, I thought they did well last year. I mean, at one point they were the best team in the nation. That's how good they were doing. They finished 23-5.
I agree with you. That's a good point because people only remember who cut down the nets, which was Baylor, but Michigan was one of the best teams in the nations at a certain point. So I'm with you on that. They were not full strength when tournament came.
No, and that's a big thing. Like they were good, and then they lost Isaiah Livers, and Isaiah Livers was playing best basketball we've seen up until that point. So they had 23 games with him, and then right before the tournament, he got hurt. They entered the tournament for 14-3. They won the Big Ten. Then they entered the tournament, and you know what? They won their 1 versus 16. They beat Louisiana State, and then they beat Florida State in a convincing fashion, 76-58. And then in Elite Eight, they lost to UCLA by 2. And UCLA was kind of that darling school. They just caught fire. We see it all the time in tournaments. We look at it. So to me, that was just one of those things. But Michigan, and it looks like Juwan Howard, he's got this program where it needs to be.
Absolutely. But he's got a little bit of help in that coaching box as Phil Martelli. No stranger to bringing his team to the Final Four, as he brought that St. Joe's Darling team. I think they fell short a little bit, but they had an undefeated regular season. Howard Eisley spent a lot of time in the NBA playing for the Utah Jazz, and just is a great basketball mind. Juwan Howard just impresses me as a leader of men. And this is coming from a Maryland basketball fan, and I know him and Mark Turgeon got it to beefing last year, and I got a little uncomfortable because it's like at that point I'm still like on the fence on my opinion of things. But I'm not messing with Juwan Howard from Chi-Town. He holds his own. He is a man's man and somebody I respect so much that I think that he's going to be a successful head coach on the NBA level whenever that time comes out. But I think that he wants to make things right and cut down the nets for the University of Michigan before it's all said and done. Of course, he had maybe the biggest deal putting together that Fab Five as he recruited the hell out of Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and those boys. So that eyesore of a game that ended their season and losing by 2, a shot made here or there could have been the difference. And again, they were playing out without who may have been their best player playing that season, which was Isaiah Livers. As far as the schedule is concerned, they play in the Big Ten. So matchups against Purdue is going to be huge. I think Purdue has a really solid team coming back. Maryland, even though they've lost some guys, they're athletic. They get up and down, and they're deep. Michigan State, always nothing to sniff at. Iowa, you got some really good teams here, and this is just their conference, and it's one of the best conferences in the nation. I don't think Big Ten gets enough praise.
No, they get some love. It's hard to play these schools too. It's a daunting task to win the Big Ten. You win the Big Ten, that's saying something like they did last year. And you can see they only get certain guys home and away. They have some. Maryland, they only get to play at home at least this year. They're away at Indiana, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Wisconsin. Those programs kind of going through a little transition right now. As far as the out of conference schedule, really, there's only really 1 or 2 games I would say to stand out. They are playing in the Roman main event tournament in Vegas, so they're going to be playing Arizona, Wichita, or something like that. Then they are also going, and they're going to play North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and that's in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, a very underrated challenge that they have. That'll be a lot of fun to watch. I think that'll be a testament to see where this team is at. And December 1st, after the tournaments that they have, that's a big tournament or big game, for these guys at Chapel Hill.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some people that have stepped away from the program, as we see in college basketball. Transition of players is at an all-time high with not only one and dones, but the transfer portal being wide open. You got a team like Texas is bringing 5 transfer starters. It's crazy, and I don't know if that has something to do with some of these coaches stepping away and just all that goes into that. But last year, Franz Wagner, a lottery pick, somebody that's showing some real promise here. And was he drafted 9 overall by the Orlando Magic? Isaiah Livers that got picked up by the Pistons. Mike Smith, who was just their just rock as far as the point guard position was concerned, and somebody that they put in to his hands to make solid decisions. He had one of the best assist to turnover ratios in the nation. And then Shawty Brown, that was a little bit of a shocker that he actually went pro, and he would have been a big part of this team going forward. The Lakers took no time to step up and pick him up, but Wagner, although it seems like he's a 3-point shooter, it was more his defensive versatility that really stood out. He had really good anticipation skills, and offensively, he really didn't have too many weaknesses. And with his size at 6'9", 220, he was a guy that you could fit in with a lot of people. And then Isaiah Livers, that I know him and Coach Howard got into it a couple times during the season, but I think that was just a coaching tactic to try to get the best out of guy that he felt like had strong potential. But definitely some losses here. And to try to fit that void, you bring in the number 2 recruiting class in the nation, and that's headlined by Caleb Houstan, a guy that I really love. And in my way too early 2022 mock draft, I got him going 5 just because I think he's just a lockdown shooter. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's a lock there, but I think that he definitely doesn't slip out of the top 10. The Canada-born sniper from outside, just this summer, averaged 17, 6, 2 in that U19 tournament. He led his team to bronze. He was definitely the leader there. He did not shoot well from deep, but that's kind of the best thing that it does. And that's a short sample size, but the fact that he still averaged 17, not shooting greatly from outside, to me shows that he has more versatility in the game than just being a shooter. Of course, going to a high school like Mount Vert, 6'9", 200, he has one of the smoothest strokes and all of the prospects coming up. And now in college basketball, McDonald's All-American. We take a look at his stats from Mount Vert. He averaged 47% from the field, 53 from the line, 39 from 3. So he's an efficient scorer, and he can score seemingly at all levels. And I think that with a guy like Juwan Howard, the sky's the limits for Caleb Houstan, and he'll come in and fill in that Franz Wagner role, but provide more outside shooting, which is obviously huge, especially when you're returning an All-American like Hunter Dickinson that's going to be in the post, filling it up. So to go along with Caleb Houstan, you got Moussa Diabate, number 16 player in the nation, and then 2 highly touted guards, 45 and 46 in the nation, Kobe Bufkin and Frankie Collins. So all of these guys will play a big role this year, especially with some big shoes to fill. What do you think about the recruiting class? I mean, specifically Caleb Houstan in particular.
No, I like Caleb. He sees the game at a high level. He's a willing passer. He's a good decision maker when he plays. He's actually a 3-point shooter, and you mentioned that. His ability, I mean, if he can shoot a 40% clip, I mean, that's legit as a freshman. Free throw percentage, he'll get that up. I think he does show pretty creativity with the ball. Like, he's able to beat his guy off the dribble. I think that's kind of an underrated part of his game. So I like.
Well, and look where he shoots from. It's a real high stroke. It's hard to block, and sometimes when you're 6'9" and you rise up, even if somebody's playing good D, you can put it over their head.
Yeah, I think, he's a knockdown guy from that. He's a smooth release, like you just mentioned, like I was going to talk about. Deep range, too. He can pull up pretty much from anywhere. Handles the ball well. I think he can initiate, too. Like, he's a guy that is versatile in a lot of different roles. Like, he's big, but I think he can initiate the offense. And I think Michigan can use him. And it'll be interesting to see how Howard uses him throughout the season. He's got ideal size for a wing. He's got good frame. He moves very, very, very well. So I like him. I like this class. Like when I was going through it and just breaking it down, Diabate he's a legit frame, 6'11", 210. Like you mentioned, he's put in some weight. I think he's gained like 20 pounds this last year, getting ready for this year. If he can put up those numbers, I love him. He's versatile. Like we just keep saying that, versatile. He projects as a possible first-round pick, I believe. He's got good size, good agility, moves well, shows promise on the offensive end, and he's more than just a post player. Like he can do that same thing. I love his, when he gets in his triple threat, he sets up his guys well. He shows really good court awareness. I think the key thing for me about this entire class is they are very good basketball players. Like they show very good court awareness. And I think that unlike what we talked about Gonzaga last time about like the fit, I think these guys fit really well together. They did a good job of recruiting and plugging in the holes that they needed to plug. And I actually think this team could be better than last year's team just based on, I think Livers and Wagner, they were great, like Wagner. They were great, but I do think like when you look at the starting lineup, and we haven't even mentioned some of these guys like Devante Jones, but I do think that they have a good job. They can fit, and then Hunter Dickinson, right? So I'll let you guys kind of talk about that, but I think they fit well. I think this recruiting class is really good. They are deep, and I think that's going to help them.
Yeah, and shoes to fill. The two guards, Kobe, Bufkin, and Frankie Collins. It's so funny because you have two super seniors that are projected in this starting lineup in Eli Brooks and Devante Jones, but you got two freshmen that are, kind of coming for their job. And if they play well, you never know who can be put in that situation. So yes, the number 2 recruiting class, but you bring in a transfer like Devante Jones, who, at Coastal Carolina was the conference player of the year. He's 6'1", but the average 7 rebounds in that frame shows his bulldog mentality. 2.8 steals a game. That had to be top 5 in the nation. And he gets to the line and he shoots a high percentage there at 86. Now, is he ready for the bump at this level? We will see. And it's sometimes when you're exceptional at a smaller school and you're the guy and everything is built around you, it works out. And then you go to a bigger team where you're playing the best teams in the country. I think that he'll fit in. And then being given that extra 5th year, you got 2 guys that are, older than, a lot of starting backcourts in the NBA. Like that can only help you. And then what Juwan Howard has done for Hunter Dickinson being an All-American last year, I think they run the offense through him just like they did last year. They give it to him in the post, and he can finish on the right-hand side, left hand. He taught him his moves. He does a little pump. Like if you don't bite on it, I'm going over top of you. You do bite on it, look, I'm going to let you jump, and then I'm going to jump after you. And like Hunter Dickinson is not wowing you with athleticism, but he's very skilled down there. And so I see him getting the ball a lot. We'll see what he does with Diabate as well. We'll see if they can play together. I think that's why you don't see Diabate in the projected starting lineup. That you kind of just have a better fit. But you got a deep bench with the young guys that we mentioned in Collins and Kobe. Who they show some versatility. Collins in high school, he played alongside Jaden Hardy that you'll see with the G League at night. But he was able to go get his with another kid that's trying to do his own job there. And yes, he's 6'1", but he can play off the ball as well. So I'm looking for this team to be deep, and we'll see what Juwan Howard does with that. It seems like we're both on the same wavelength, that we think that he's one of the most impressive head coaches that we have. And again, with a lot of turnover, you got to see what happens with the chemistry. And like we said, this with like all of the teams in the nation, and no team. It's not like when we grew up in the 90s where you saw teams play together 3-4 years. You got to do it on the fly. And I think that these players complement each other.
I think that's the key word for you is compliment. I'm glad you know that as a PE teacher. They complement well. They fit well into their groups, and they do that very well. The guy that I did want to point out real quick is Devante. I think he could be Devante is going to be kind of the catalyst of this team. He's strong. He's physical. he averaged a lot of points. You can see that his 3-point percentage was good there. He's an aggressive scorer. A lot of scouts like the way that he can shoot, make shots in a variety of ways. He's adept at drawing fouls. He does that very well, and he shoots a pretty good clip from the free throw percentage, as you can see. He hasn't faced top-notch competition, but he played well at the G League elite camp that he went to. Right now, he's a second-round prospect, but he's the type of guy that can kind of work in this group and have that solid senior leadership with other guys on this team. And really, they can kind of lean on him a little bit. If they got to go get a bucket, maybe Caleb and these other guys, they might, the beginning part of the season, they're going to struggle with that area. They always do, younger guys. Well, if Devante can go get that bucket, go get that bucket. So I really like Devante here and Jones, what he's going to do. And obviously, Eli's going to be that guy too. They're both there. I think they're going to provide that leadership that these young guys need and they can rally behind. And I think Juwan, when we talk about Howard and who he is as a person, he's a leader of men. And so the one thing about Juwan Howard is, like, I've seen all of his interviews and I've seen all of his quotes and everything like that. And as a basketball coach, he is that. He's a leader of men. And so I think he'll do a very good job of putting around this team and making this team good. I'm a fan of this team. I'm a fan of Juwan. And obviously Phil Martelli. You can't not love Phil Martelli.
Yeah, and I did want to harp one more time because you did mention some really good things about Devante Jones and what he brings to this team. And it's different from Mike Smith last year, who was a dimer supreme.
Yeah.
Like, he was a top 5, top 10 in the nation in assists. And Devante Jones isn't that same player. He's more bucket oriented. But when you're the number one player on your team and you're the number one player in your conference, you went the conference player of the year, to shoot percentages this high at 49% from the field, 37 from 3, 86 from free throw, that's efficient. Then you look at his super senior backcourt mate in Eli Brooks, who is just going to be a super role player. And yet both of these guys are 6'1", but they're bigger than that. He shot 40 from 3, 91 from the free throw line. So you're looking at an efficient team. And I already talked about Caleb Houstan. I think that they have the components to be a really damn good team. So
all right, what do you think then? What are your projections, Coach? I'll let you go first.
Projections is Final Four. And I feel like now, like I mentioned, this is my like third team. Like UCLA, Gonzaga, like if they get in the same bracket, somebody's gonna lose. But I think, to me, there's good teams, and then there are championship contending teams, and this is one of them. You got versatility in the wings in Houstan. You got one of the best post players in Dickinson, and then you got veteran guard play mixed in with young, possibly future superstars at the college level in college, Collins and Kobe.
Yeah, I think this is the year they make the Final Four, and I think that they're kind of my pick right now to win the title. I think that with the roster, with everything that's built in, how they're kind of look at their starting lineup, if Howard can be that guy to do this, I don't see how they don't win a championship. If he's that guy, so that's my opinion. I think this is my favorite team coming into the season. Obviously, things change, Big Ten changes, injuries change, but based on coaching pedigree, recruiting pedigree, players that are still there, the fit, everything, I love what Michigan's doing.
And this is year 3. They went 19-12. Juwan's first year. We know what they did last year at 23-5. His son is in the program, so he's kind of got an ear in the locker room. In Jace Howard, and we'll see if he gets a little bit more playing time. They just announced that Jet Howard, his other son, signed and is going to come in next year, and he's a top 60 recruit in high school basketball. So I see, the talent keep coming in. And even last year, like Isaiah Todd was supposed to go there. Knicks was supposed to go there. They ended up going G League, and guess what? They didn't skip a beat. And Hunter Dickinson turned into like an All-American almost overnight. Like, yes, he's good, but coaching has a lot to do with the progression of these players, and not only with his post knowledge, but with Howard Eisley's knowledge in the guard position, and Frank and Martelli that we talked about earlier, who's produced NBA players like Delonte West and Jameer Nelson. Sky's the limit. Well-rounded team, veteran backcourt, a superstar freshman at the wing position, and then a post it's very potent defensively, but yet also offensively with them kind of going old school, running their offense through Hunter Dickinson. So it's exciting to see Michigan, and Kevin thinks that this team could win it all. I think that this team is Final Four bound, depending on their matchup. So all eyes on Michigan basketball, and we look forward to this college basketball season. Coach Kev?
Hey, that's it, man. Good luck for Michigan Wolverines. Got a soft place in my heart for you guys and Juwan, but I do think that they are talented enough to make a title run this season.
Also, let's get Glen Rice into the Hall of Fame. My favorite player growing up. I got his jersey up in the background, and he might have had the greatest college run in the NCAA tournament. And hopefully, maybe Caleb Houstan can repeat that success this year.
We'll see. Get him in the Hall of Fame. He deserves to be in there.
Get him in the Hall.